on Earth, they mix them, and they produce these counterfeit aliens. Hybrids who are coming here now, they're claiming that they're aliens, but they have an agenda, and they've been lying to us. They don't come from us. They do come from us, we don't come from them. All right, soft disclosures of aliens and SSPs in media. That's the final volume, and there will be another book that's separate from this Solar Apocalypse series. It's called The Alien Infested Moon. Coffee table book, book 1. That'll be just photographs from all over our solar system of creatures. All right, so this is a warning I just need to read out. There are people who literally would kill me to prevent this information getting out. Even though anybody can go and find this stuff if they know how to look and what they're looking for. You know, NASA has been engaged, for example, in an active conspiracy to justify their space efforts by saying, well, maybe in the next decade we'll find microbial life, bacterial life, somewhere out there in the solar system. We need to go investigate it. And by covering up what the Viking landers found, and they knew all along that there was microbial life. Absolutely clear the experiments were. And the one experiment that failed, they knew it was defective as well. But nonetheless, they used that as a basis to not admit the truth. In other words, it's about money, it's about funding, it's about keeping themselves going, and it's also about not telling the public the truth because, you know, there's this idea out there with Brookings and so forth that if they told us the truth, suddenly our religions would all be in chaos here on Earth. You know, because the aliens have been claiming they created us, and that completely undermines the account of the Judeo-Christian ethos, you know, or Islam, Christianity, Judaism, you know, where the belief is that God created us here. We didn't evolve. The reality is the truth. It's not the Judeo-Christian ethos that gets undermined. It's macroevolution that gets undermined. Evolution is its own religion. It exists for atheists, for agnostics to deny that God exists or to deny their responsibility to Him as His creatures. And so it's not Christians, for example, who would be undermined. It's the atheists and agnostics who are undermined by the truth. That is what is really happening. Okay, so you may delay certain disclosures. In other words, there are certain things that I have that I'm not going to go public with and I'm not going to talk about, but will come out by the time the Lord comes back, which is some years from now. By not harming me, my family, my interests, etc., those things are delayed because I won't put them out before the Lord comes back. Okay? However, if there's any effort to interfere with this, to impede it, to stop it, not just these books, the other things that I'm working on, or to harm my family or my interests, etc., it will all come out at once. And then I will tell you also, God gave me a vision years ago of something that was happening in my life that I wasn't aware of at the time. But He showed me myself being surrounded by polar bears in a dream. They were literally encircling me. I was standing in the middle of a grass field in this dream, and I was being encircled by polar bears, and they were staring at me the whole time. They were walking around me, and as I was standing in this field, tornadoes were coming down all around, ripping up the field, everywhere but where I was standing. And these polar bears were encircling me. And the dream ended. This was back in around 2005. And I told a daughter of mine about this dream, and she said to me, Daddy, I think that the polar bears are angels. And I said to her, yeah, I think you're right. That same day, I went and looked just randomly, just a thought that came into my head. I went and looked on the internet to see if my book, The Antichrist and a Cup of Tea, had been posted on the internet. I had no reason to suspect that was the case. But I discovered it was all over the place in torrent sites. And for months, people had been downloading thousands and thousands of copies of it. It had been posted illegally. Copyright infringement on the net, the whole book. That was the first edition of The Antichrist and a Cup of Tea. The second edition will be out next year. But anyway, they were posted at torrent sites. Torrent, you know, tornado. I didn't know there was such a thing as a torrent site until I went and found my book all over the place on them. So the Lord was giving me a vision to warn me that this was happening. I wasn't aware of it, but also to show me that I was being guarded by these powerful angels. You know, polar bears are fairly fierce creatures. So that's how I interpret the vision, the dream, is that these were fairly powerful angels that are guarding me. And you know, if you look in the Old Testament, it only took one angel to wipe out hundreds of thousands of men in a night. If God needed to defeat an army, for example, to defend those who are in Judea or Jerusalem, every angel of God is quite powerful if they act. And in this case, there's a bunch of them. So I believe I'm being guarded by God, and that nothing can happen to me until all these works are completed. But this is a warning to those who are in secret space programs, to those who are conspiring to prevent this information from coming out. You cannot stop me. It is not possible. But if you try, you will be bringing great disaster upon yourselves. Okay, why me? Why now? For whom? So God has had me working on this for years. I didn't actually expect to ever be doing this or be involved in this arena. When Christ comes back, there's going to be war from mankind against him and his angels. And yet people have heard for 19 plus centuries that he's coming back and that his angels are coming with him from heaven. What kind of insanity does it take for mankind to turn its weapons of war against God himself, God incarnate, with his angels coming to the earth to judge and save the world, to stop us from destroying ourselves? What kind of insanity does it take for the militaries of the nations to choose to go to war against him as if it were an alien invasion? Okay? What have the humanoids been saying to our governments with whom they've been colluding? What have they been saying to those with whom they've been participating in the secret space programs? Who's been helping them to reproduce humanoids? To do genetic experiments on humans, to help them produce bodies for themselves, for example. Humanoid bodies. Who's been doing that? What kind of lies have been told? Why is it happening? Okay? There's an agenda to the world wars and to all the wars that we've been fighting. It's not just that we're evil naturally toward one another. Since the fall in the Garden of Eden, we are evil naturally toward one another. But there is a spiritual agenda. It is to arm us, to equip us, to advance us technologically, particularly as we get close to the Lord's return. It is to get mankind to engage in the war that the angels begin against God, the fallen angels. A third of the angels in heaven transgressed and rebelled and decided to serve against God, to join in Satan's rebellion. Satan was the most powerful of the fallen angels, the anointed or messianic cherub. He was one of the cherubim, the most powerful class of angels God created. He rebelled against God. He wanted to set his own throne above the stars of God. And in the process, he took a third of the angels in heaven with him. And there's an innumerable number of angels. They've been at war with God this whole time. But they came down to earth, where God created mankind another life thousands of years ago. And they engaged mankind in the fall. They deceived Adam and Eve. They lied to Eve. Got her to disobey God. Suddenly, Eve was fallen, like them. Eve got Adam to sin. Instead of Adam going to God and saying, hey, what's this all about? How do we resolve this? My wife Eve here, whom you gave me, has transgressed. Instead of doing that, Adam participated in the sin. Adam could no longer be the sacrifice for Eve as a consequence of that. God couldn't kill Adam and raise Adam from the dead. He could have if Adam hadn't sinned. A new solution was needed. But in the meantime, we have been engaged in the war against God through all sorts of false religions, false spiritualities, spiritual deception, and now humanoids. The fallen angels weren't content with our transgression and our fall and our engagement in that war. They went further. Some of them came into human women and they raped them. They took them as wives, forcibly, sometimes perhaps voluntarily. They enslaved human beings. They took human servants, some as allies, voluntarily. They produced hybrid offspring, human angel offspring, who were supernatural, like themselves, but different in that they had flesh and bone like we do. These are the demigods, the quote-unquote gods of lore, the gods of mythology, of ancient Rome, Greece, and really before the flood. And the world became filled with violence. Christians often wonder, why did God create dinosaurs? Such a threat to life on earth, such a threat to us, such terrifying creatures. But then other Christians say, maybe he didn't. Maybe the Nephilim, who were hybrids, set about to take other life on earth, not just humans, and hybridize it, alter it genetically, crossbreed it, combine it genetically, something that God never intended. He put genetic barriers in us and in all other life that he created on earth to make that not possible naturally. But if you tamper with the genes, a lot of things are possible. So some Christians believe that the dinosaurs were all hybrids. That's why they weren't preserved aboard Noah's Ark. Today we have alligators and we have smaller reptiles. We have Komodo dragons. But we don't have the huge terrifying stuff. It all died. Even in the oceans, it died. Noah's flood was roughly 4,400 years ago. Okay? But what about the rest of the solar system? What happened there? Scripture doesn't say. We know about Noah's flood on earth, right? We don't know exactly how it took place. And I'm digressing here a bit because I'm going to move on to all that. We don't know exactly how it took place. Christians theorize we had a supercontinent. There's evidence for that. And it's called Pangaea, for example. All the continents on earth appear to fit together in one in the past. Some people call it Atlantis. Okay, surrounded by one ocean. Scripture indicates that we never saw a rainbow on the surface of the earth prior to the flood. In terms of physics, that would be because the atmosphere was thicker. And Scripture indicates we had a water vapor canopy that protected life on earth from radiation reaching the surface. And also so that we never saw a rainbow on the surface of the planet. Scripture indicates it never rained on the earth before the flood. The atmosphere was supersaturated with water. It was moist, but there was also a geyser system built into the crust of the planet that watered the planet and threw water into the air. But we also had this supersaturated atmosphere. And the supercontinent was supported on pillars underneath. It was surrounded by water underneath, but supported on pillars of a sort. Okay? With the flood, that crust was crushed. It was shattered. The pillars were broken up underneath. God collapsed the water vapor canopy. So water came up from underneath that supercontinent that was being crushed to flood the surface, but also that water vapor canopy, that supersaturated atmosphere, was collapsed. So it literally rained globally for 40 days and 40 nights as that water was being flushed from the atmosphere. And afterwards, our atmosphere was thinner, as it is today, as it has been this entire time since. And we see rainbows on the surface of the planet, but we also get a lot more radiation than we did before the flood. So for example, now, when we look at carbon-12 to 14 ratios, we can gauge how old things are back to perhaps 4,400 years ago, a little less than 4,400 years ago, up to the point of the flood. But before the flood, the assumptions don't work. We didn't have the same breakdown of carbon-12 to 14 on the surface of the planet that we have now because the cosmic radiation wasn't reaching the surface of the planet. Everything before the flood would look, in this particular instance, carbon-12 to carbon-14, very, very old compared to everything after the flood. The dating model is nonsense for anything older than the event of the flood. There are similar assumptions made around other dating models where they try to say that the Earth is old, older than perhaps 6,000 years old. Those models all have assumptions. They all break down if Scripture is true, without exception. They all break down. So we've been lied to. Here's why I'm going there. And I want to tell you, I'm here because God called me to this, okay? He showed me this. He's directed me to come to this group of people. This is where I'm doing the disclosure initially. To people who have been lied to, who've been deceived, but every one of you is here because you want to know the truth. You're here because you're seeking the truth, but you've never actually been given the truth, okay? I'm going to give it to you today, but I'm not just going to tell you about it. I'm going to give you the evidence no one else has been able to give you. Others who want to know the truth, who floundered trying to figure it out, who haven't had that evidence. The reason he gave it to me, and not to all of you initially, and you're going to have it, is because I know him. I serve him. He saved me. I was once an atheist and an agnostic and a New Ager and a pagan. That's what I was. I didn't know any better than any of you have known. Okay? I had the same beliefs that you have walking through that door today. You know, same beliefs. Okay? I didn't know any better. I'm here because I know better and I have the truth and I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to hand it to you on a silver platter in the Solar Apocalypse series. And I'm going to upend all the lies of NASA, the European Space Agency, Russia, the Russian agency. China and Japan are in on the same conspiracies. They're not talking publicly about what they're seeing. But they are, thank God, giving us the photos. And they are no longer tampering with them for the most part. That said, in the book, I give evidence of direct tampering by NASA in the past. The same photos where they removed all the things that are in them, creatures and so forth, that were completely obvious. And other versions of them, the originals, where they didn't remove them. I've got both. I have the untampered photos. And they've been releasing them secretly. Some people from NASA have. Not everyone at NASA, for example, likes what they're doing. They want the truth to be out, but they're gagged. They're not able to speak about it. They're under severe penalty. I don't know what those penalties are. But they don't talk about it publicly. So what they're doing instead is they're releasing things under the noses of those who are trying to keep the information away from us. Okay? I have it, and I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to tell you how you can pull it up and how you can reproduce it. All right, here's why you need this set. If not for today, meaning this presentation, every one of you could attend these conferences until you die. You could keep going and trying to get more information and trying to figure things out, trying to understand. And you'll pick up a tidbit here and a tidbit there. But you're not going to get what you'll get from even one of the volumes in this set. Nothing close to it, in fact. Okay? This is real disclosure. You're going to see that when we get to the photos later. They're quite shocking. They're quite stunning. They're amazing. But again, we're only talking about Mars here today. I want you to know that after you've seen these photos, and you've been shocked and amazed and stunned, I've got photos that are as good or better in most instances from several other places in our solar system, including our moon. Okay? And when you think about that, you're going to say, how can you have better than this? For the moon. Why aren't we seeing these things? How come it's not being shouted from the rooftops? You're going to understand that when I tell you about how this exobiological life actually works. Why it's been under our noses, in front of our faces, and we just haven't seen it. Okay? So, you might have spent hundreds of dollars to be here today. I had someone here, this group, pay hundreds of dollars to get me here today, to cover the plane ticket, the hotel, let alone the cost of the conference, right? And how much do you spend to go to all those conferences year after year? I'm assuming many people here, because you're dedicated to the truth, have gone to multiple conferences. This is my first one ever. Okay? I'm here to give you the truth. I already have it. I want you to have it. I want you to go and do what I did by yourselves without me. Okay? I'm giving you that means. The cost of the set is expensive. Half of the books are in full color because of the images. I want to give you the best possible images. I can't reproduce hundreds or thousands of copies at once. I don't have the finances for that. So initially, it's expensive to print them. Color printing is crazy expensive when you're not doing big runs. For that reason, you're going to have to pay a little more for the set. But again, you can't get this information in even one of these books anywhere, for the average cost of one of these conferences. So get it. It will serve you extremely well. All right, that's really the point there. It's cheaper than the cost of an average conference like this to get the whole set. All right, the dry stuff, the software essentials. I happen to be an imaging expert. I'm an IT expert. My son back there who has joined me, I'm so pleased that he is here, Ariel, is currently getting a couple of master's degrees. And sorry, I need my adapter. Is it set up? What happened? Okay, it came unplugged.
And
bear with me for a moment, folks, till I get it back up.
it keeps going into screensaver. You should just turn off the screensaver.
Yeah. I just have to talk less between screens. Not be such a motor mouth. Anyway, so I'll just give you a little overview while this is coming back up. We're going to talk about the behavior of insects, reptiles, amphibians on Earth. Things that we know about, okay? We're going to talk about fossilization on Earth, flash fossilization in this case. Things that most people don't know about. So let me put this down for one moment.
Do you want me to turn off the screensaver for you?
I can do it.
Okay.
Thank And then we're going to talk about what kind of behavior we should expect from hybrids. Okay? And a lot of other things, and then we'll get into the actual images at the end. I'm going to show you today evidence of actual life on Mars. In other words, not just fossils, not just good photos of living creatures, but actual movement of creatures between frames. There are instances where NASA, in the rovers, took multiple frames of creatures moving. I've got a series of photos I'm going to show you where multiple creatures are moving between the frames. Well-defined creatures. And I have a number of examples like that. The photos I'm going to show you, for example, from Mars today, I'm probably going to show you, I don't know, maybe a dozen photos. I didn't actually count them. I have thousands. Okay? So I cherry-picked a few. But there are many, many photos available, and I've barely begun to look. Okay? There's a whole lot out there to be discovered that I haven't found yet in terms of creatures. When I was in Coast to Coast, I pointed out that a human being could spend, one person, their entire lives, every waking moment of every day, for the remainder of their natural lives, doing nothing but scouring photos that are already published and available on the internet. From NASA, the European Space Agency, the Chinese Space Agency, like the Chang'e rover photos, for example. You'd never get through even a small percentage of them in your entire life. You couldn't do it. The manpower isn't possible for one human being. That's how much is out there. So like I said, I barely begun to find these things. And yet I have a lot. And I told George Norrie on Coast to Coast, it only takes one image to blow this whole thing out of the water for NASA and for the world. Just one. You're going to see several today. Any one of which would do it. They're all that good. So, sorry about this. My computer is not the fastest. I had it ready to go before it died. So if you see my cord come out again, warn me, please. I can't get new batteries for this machine because it's an older machine. You guys get to see this again. Where is my machine? Okay, so it died and it's not showing it to me. Let me ring it up here. I'm going to put the mic down for a moment. Okay. I easily confuse myself. I have virtual machines inside my virtual machines.
How to make an audience wait on the edge of their seat.
Yeah, I should call me Murphy after this.
We're live streaming. Everybody's going, what the F?
That would be awesome. Okay. I'm looking for my play button here in PowerPoint.
Go to slideshow and
Start from beginning,
current slide.
far left. There you go. Good job.
Thank you.
Easy, yes.
See, even I can get nervous after talking to audiences lots of times, right? Okay. All right, back to the software. So while my software was busy failing because my computer died, Viewer, Earphone View, there's something unique about this. There are a lot of programs you can get, including free ones, to view images. This one, it's not the most polished interface, but it is by far my favorite. You can use it very quickly. It's a very rapid viewer. Easy to navigate and use once you get familiar with it. But the key thing that you need to know that distinguishes this piece of software from all other software out there is the XY coordinate thing, the stable XY coordinate. So in other words, in most software, like Photoshop, for example, if you bring up the info panel, you can see the XY coordinate of where you have your mouse pointer over the image that you're looking at. Generally speaking, if you zoom in on the image, the coordinate changes. In other words, it's the XY coordinate of the enlarged image that you're looking at that point. That's no use. If I want to give you the XY coordinate in some large image to go look to find something that's in that image that I want you to see, to verify what I'm showing you. Earphone view is different. Its XY coordinate is stable. So if you zoom in on your image, the XY coordinate doesn't change. Okay? So I can give you an XY coordinate in some massive panoramic image. You can use earphone view and you can zoom into that exact coordinate. You can find exactly what it is that I was pointing out very easily. I've asked Earphone, the creator of that software, to add an ability to have a dialog where you can type in the XY coordinate, press enter, and have it automatically go to that spot in the image and zoom in on it. I hope that he'll humor me, but I'm going to ask each one of you after today, and please take this seriously, email him. I'll give you his email address. Email him and ask him to add that feature. Okay? He needs to hear from a lot of people to actually realize, yeah, this is serious, I should add this feature. Okay? If he doesn't do it already. So that's the viewer that you should be using. I'm going to use it to show you those creatures that moved on Mars between frames today. So you'll get to see an actual example of the use of that software.
Could you spell that, what you're saying?
IRFAN, view, one word, V-I-E-W. IRFAN, view.
Thank you.
It's free. Super piece of software for looking at these images. And there's a 64-bit version of it and a 32-bit for those who are techies. Anyway, you need enlarging software also, and you shouldn't be using just any software for enlargement. For example, people look at Photoshop and they say, use that, it's got a bicubic enlarger. Actually, it's pretty poor compared to what you need for many of these images. What you should be using is software that supports Lanczos, L-A-N-C-Z-O-S. That's an algorithm for enlarging. There are a few versions of it that are out that are major, 2, 3, 5, and 8 actually is what they are. That is the best enlargement algorithm that exists, that's public, period. And there are a number of programs that support it. When you zoom in, for example, with Earphone View, I'm certain that it's using the Lanczos algorithm, okay? But you can get programs like BenVista Photo Zoom, which supports version 2 of Lanczos. You have to pay for that one. You can get Fastone Image Viewer, which is a free software out there. It supports 2 and 3 of Lanczos. It's free to enlarge images. Stoic Smart Resizer has a completely different algorithm. It does compete well with Lanczos, and it sometimes can give you superior results. Completely different algorithm. It comes out of Russia, but the program is called Stoic Smart Resizer, S-T-O-I-K. Version 3 is what's out. And then Smilla Enlarger. It's a freeware program that, again, has a completely different proprietary algorithm, but it's free. Sometimes gives really weird results, but sometimes really great, useful results. So those are the enlarging programs I recommend you get. Definitely get something like Fastone or BenVista to have the Lanczos. You can also, by the way, get a free program. It's a command line program, so you have to be a little more technical with it. It's a little less polished, called Lanczos Resize. That will allow you to do versions 5 and 8 of Lanczos, okay? Again, technical, probably dry, but these are the best programs that exist that you can get a hold of to enlarge your images and get results that match what you're seeing on your screen or better, okay? Tone Mapper. A lot of people have gone in and they've edited, they've colorized images, or they've manually altered contrast and brightness and other tone curve things, like the gamma, for example, in a portion of an image to try to bring that part out. Today there's this thing called HDR photography, high dynamic range, so you can take a series of shots with your cell phone where it'll snap a bunch of shots with different exposure settings automatically, and then it'll use some software or algorithm inbuilt into the hardware that's software based to merge those images and take the most visible portions of that image throughout from each image, merge them so that you get one image that's been composited from the whole series, where you're seeing the best reproduction of each portion of the overall image. Okay, so you can see things much more clearly in the computer-generated combined image than you can in any individual frame at a given exposure. Okay. Now you heard yesterday, I think it was Brett who mentioned this, that there are things captured by camera sensors that we can't see with our eyes, wavelengths that are captured. There are a lot of things oftentimes in these images that are there, but we can't see them. Okay, so what NASA is giving us, for example, oftentimes is very compressed. Sometimes things are clipped out of the images because they're so compressed that we actually lose color detail on things that we otherwise would be able to see. But you can take an HDR package that will do tone mapping, take a single image, because NASA isn't usually giving us multiple exposures, although they do exist. For many NASA images, it's just most people don't know how to get to them, and it's not the publicly accessible stuff ordinarily, but if you know where to look, you can get multiple color representations of the same image often, okay? And you could put those through something like an HDR package to get a better representation. But when you can't find them, and often you can't, you can take a single image and you can put it through HDR tone mapping. There are programs that will take one image and emulate what an HDR package does with multiple images. It'll take one image and it'll bring out the color details that you can't see in the darker areas of the image and even out the exposure and alter it throughout the image. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of that today. But these are the HDR packages that I recommend. Some are free. Luminance HDR, free package, really great. The Nick Collections HDR Effects, EFEX Pro 2. It's a free package that Google had purchased from Nick. The company went out of business, Google bought it. They made the Nick Collection free, and then they stopped making it free. Another company has picked it up, but you can still get it. It's a plugin series that works with Photoshop. It's a Photoshop plugin series. One of the modules in it is called tone mapping. It's a tone mapping module. It allows you to take one image in Photoshop or a program that supports the plugin like Corel Photo Paint 2018 fully supports it. So you can use it. It gives great results, and it's a free plugin if you happen to have Photoshop or Corel Photo Paint. Affinity Photo's excuse me, I'm tripping over my tongue. Affinity Photo, it's a program. It's tone mapping persona. Okay, it's a module in that program. You can easily access it. Again, we'll do single image HDR tone mapping. All of these programs give slightly different results. You know, another good one is Photomatix, and I didn't mention it here. I should have. Corel Aftershot Pro 3 also does it. So there are a few packages you can get. I've mentioned my favorite ones here. I should have put Photomatix Pro 6. That's another one. Some of these, again, are free. You'll see the results, and they're quite remarkable in some of these photos today. And then a cataloger or a rater. Okay, there are lots of programs that allow you to track your photos, to rate them, like give them star ratings or tag them with keywords and find them easily later. Most of those you have to pay some money for. Most of them are inferior in their functionality to Adobe Bridge CC. And Adobe Bridge CC is free. A lot of people don't know that. It's completely free. So is its Camera Raw module, the same one that's used in Photoshop. It's accessible in Adobe Bridge, and it's included with Adobe Bridge. It's free. But with that program, you can do the star ratings and the tagging, and you can easily find your photos. You can view your photos. Very good professional program, but easy enough to use. It's like browsing photos, and you get to do all that stuff. Again, it's Adobe Bridge CC, free. Those are the four things you need. A viewer, in this case, one that lets you handle the XY coordinate thing. Why? Because I'm telling you the XY coordinate, not just the URLs and names of the images where I got what I'm going to show you in these books. I'm giving you the actual XY coordinates in those images that you can download directly from NASA or the ESA or wherever. Go directly to what I've blown up and shown you in the books. Okay? And then you can use the tone mapping software and so forth to get your own results with those images when you crop them, enlarge them, whatever. Okay, so that would be a true methodical, professional way to do it. And you can do it. Most of it's free. All right, Noah's flood and fallen liars. I began to touch on this in my preamble, my wordy preamble here. So the Nephilim is a Hebrew word, and lots of people have heard different meanings of the word Nephilim. Okay? But usually the meanings are false. They're not the real meanings, not the real translation of the word. It's a plural word. Nephil is the singular, Nephilim, plural. Im is the plural suffix. It actually means multiple things, but common meanings are fallen, for Nephil, and a liar, or a deceiver. I combine it, I make it fallen liar. That's what it means. Okay? And that can apply, by the way, to human beings. We're fallen liars. We lie all the time, from birth, practically. I mean, the moment we're out of the womb, we're busy doing mischief, most of us. My son back there is an exception. He never was. I say that truthfully. He never was. He was amazing. So, he's an anomaly. Perfect for the conference. Okay. So when translated, the singular word means fallen. It means liar, fallen liars. And this is, by the way, useful for fallen angels. It's useful for the human angelic hybrids who came from fallen angels. Okay? It's useful for their offspring today, and they did go further with their offspring. Okay, the humanoid aliens. And I'll talk about that later. Anunnaki. Were the Nephilim Anunnaki? Yes, they were. They were. Okay? Were they the so-called gods of lore? Yes, they claimed to be gods, many of them, not all of them. Now they call themselves aliens for this more scientific world we live in, this more brainy world of mankind today. Aliens, atheists, they're not going to so much accept the idea of gods. But if you call them aliens, yeah, they can deal with that. Okay? But they are wicked, unnatural creatures that God never intended to exist. He put the genetic barriers there for a reason. Humans weren't supposed to cross with angels. Much of the evil that mankind has suffered down through history is because they did. Because of what the fallen angels, not all of the fallen angels, a group of them, did. In taking on human women as wives and so forth. And a lot of other things have happened since, and today we have secret space programs. It's all part of the same thing. It's all related. And today's secret space programs weren't the first ones. The first secret space program happened before Noah's flood, thousands of years ago. Scripture doesn't talk about it. Okay? I'm here as literally the world's foremost Christian theologian on the planet. In history, in fact, other than the apostles and a very few individuals, including the two witnesses who will come on the scene for 3.5 years before Christ returns. And I'm telling you that there are things Scripture doesn't cover. And the evidence is all around us. It's out there in our solar system. I'm going to give you that evidence today, but it all has to fit into a biblical context. Scripture is absolutely true. Just because God didn't tell us about everything doesn't mean it didn't happen. We can look with our eyes. He gave us a brain to figure things out, to understand what we see, but He expects us to be truthful with it, and that means we have to put it into a biblical context, and I'm going to give that to you today. So are the Nephilim actually here to help us? There are people out there like Stephen Greer, for example, who thinks that he thinks these creatures are benign. They're not here to harm us. If they wanted to, they've got the technology to wipe us out. They would have done it already. If they wanted to take our planet, they'd have done it. They could. Okay? Our technology, until very recently, in some of the secret space programs, has been quite primitive compared to their anti-gravity craft, for example. There's a lot that they've understood scientifically that we haven't until recently. Okay? We have our own anti-gravity craft now. And to Bjago, lots of others have come forward with that. There's lots of evidence for that. There's been collusion behind the scenes. They're not so much ahead of us anymore as they were. At least the things that are secret. Okay? But are they here to help us? They interfered, for example, with nuclear weapons, right? They didn't want us blowing ourselves up. They must be here to do good. They don't want us to destroy our environment. They want us to live, right? Is that because they're here to help us? No, it's not. Satan and the angels are at war with God. They'd happily wipe us out. Why haven't they? Okay? Firstly, they want to get us to go to war against God. What better way to, hurt God than to make his children turn against him? Right? What better way? But beyond that, in terms of their aliens' agenda, they want to create like God did. He made us in his image as creators, like him. Okay, we're not gods, but he did give us that desire and that nature. Same thing with the angels. They have that nature. They wanted to be their own gods. Satan wanted to be a god, like his creator. Right? So he wants to create life. He doesn't have that ability. He's like an amoeba compared to the real God, but he's a lot smarter than we are. Okay? Right, so far, anyway, till we get resurrected or translated, after God returns and gives us our eternal bodies. And then we'll be like the angels, only different because we'll still have flesh and bone. That's what Scripture teaches. We will be eternal. Those who are Christians and who are resurrected, and we will have bodies that can never die, like those of the angels, but we'll have flesh and bone too. And we will be able to reproduce and populate the universe. As creatures who aren't fallen anymore after Christ returns, he will change our nature. But until then, Satan is trying to overthrow God. And so are the fallen angels, and so are their progeny, the hybrids, the Nephilim, and then the counterfeit aliens that they've been busy creating in batches ever since. Dozens of races of different humanoid creatures who've been appearing to mankind, like greys, reptilians, mantids. Creatures that look like, Bigfoot. Okay? All kinds of creatures that have been reported. Lots of witnesses to most of them. People talk about these things in the secret space program. They've met a number of them. And then there are also the so-called aliens like the Nordics that look exactly like us. It's because they are like us. They're humans who created breakaway civilizations when they were taken elsewhere, off Earth. All this happened around the time of Noah's flood. So, the flood. I'll come to that. Well, let me backtrack. They're not here to help us. They aren't destroying us. They don't want us to destroy ourselves. It's because they need us to reproduce right now. I'm going to come to that. The counterfeit aliens can't exist without us, yet. They haven't reached the point of genetic manipulation where they can completely break all the barriers that God put in place. He made us so we easily self-reproduce. These creatures cannot do that. They need our eggs. They need our sperm. They need certain enzymes, bodily fluids, body parts in some cases. They need other creatures here on Earth, their genes, to create these recipes of humanoids that they produce in labs. Or in some cases where they put them in the wombs of human women, they gestate, they take the babies before they're born. And they look humanoid. And then they introduce humans to them aboard their craft, right? To nurse them, to try to teach them to be more human, more emotional or whatever. Okay? But the day will come, if God doesn't intervene, when they do succeed in self-reproducing and they don't need us anymore. What will they do at that point? It's my theory, my postulate, I guess, that they'd engage in a scorched humans policy and wipe us from the face of the earth and replace us with their own progeny. Something God didn't intend to exist. They are not our friends. Why are they technologically advancing us? It's not to benefit us. It's so that we can go to war against Christ and his angels at his return alongside them, as if that were the evil alien invasion. Okay? So it's a good cop, bad cop thing. The bad cops are claiming to be the good cops, if you will, and warning us that the so-called bad cops might invade someday, and we're here to help you. We don't want to see that happen. Right? So in the meantime, there are multiple agendas to keep themselves going through abductions, etc., to give us technology, to advance us, to deceive us and delude us, not just with a bunch of false religions, but for those who don't go for all that stuff, with the notion that we might be invaded. So we have all these movies like Independence Day and so forth, right? All these alien threat warnings that are coming to us from every direction, with nobody actually telling us the truth or what the real fears and real threats supposedly are. All right, so I'm here to give you the truth, to help you understand the agenda is not what you've been told. And it's very threatening in reality. And unless God intervenes, we are toast. But he is going to intervene in a few years. Okay? In the meantime, there are lots of incredible things in our solar system, and if they get brought back to Earth, they will endanger us, which is another reason that I've decided to go public with this and to put the effort into this. Not just for you to know the truth, but for people like Elon Musk, others who may want to go to Mars or the moon or whatever, bring back samples. And like I said, I know what happened on the moon. I even know what they brought back. It's not what we were told. So I will get into all of that in other volumes. Today we're going to try to focus on Mars. So I'm going to move pretty quickly. You're going to get a lot of background information here. It's what you need to be able to reproduce these results and find life on Mars. And then we're going to see actual creatures. All right, the Nephilim were the first humanoid hybrids, and they were partially angelic. When they died, the ones who remained on Earth, they became the demons. In Scripture we see demons that can possess human beings and other creatures. And they're always malevolent. Okay? And they are supernatural. Like us, when we die, we have a body, a soul, and a spirit. Our soul and our spirit depart, but we don't become demons. We go somewhere awaiting either resurrection or we go to judgment if we have lived our lives in rebellion to God. Not so with the Nephilim when they died. They roamed the earth as partially angelic, disembodied creatures. Like dark spirits, if you will. And Scripture actually calls them shades. That's what the Hebrew means, shades or shadows. I personally have seen them with my eyes. That's exactly what they look like. And sometimes they've been filmed. And you can see them on film as dark shadows moving in rooms. Sometimes they accompany grays. In other words, they can possess, demons can, the humanoids that are completely corporeal, like you and I, that have been cooked up in these labs, if you want to call them that, these quote-unquote alien labs. They can possess them. And when they do possess them, then the grays, for example, or whichever humanoid happens to be possessed, actually becomes a Nephilim. They become one of those creatures that was alive before Noah's flood, that's now disembodied, or that has died since, okay, physically. They're very malevolent. They too will be judged at Christ's return. So that's the Nephilim. That's the origin of the demons. Hybridizing life from Earth, they're cooking up batches of humanoids to deceive us. And what better way to deceive the church than to say, oh yeah, you don't believe in aliens? Yeah, the Scripture doesn't talk about that. It talks about angels, right? But if they're aliens and they evolved on some other planet, obviously God and the Scriptures aren't true. They're a lie, right? And by the way, we've got corpses that have got flesh and blood. Aliens don't have that according to Scripture, or angels don't. So they're not angels. Obviously, they evolved somewhere else, and they've been telling us that they created us, and we can see from our genetic laboratory results here, talking about the secret space programs now, that they have human genes. They must be telling us the truth. They've got the evidence right there in their bodies. Scripture's not true, okay? Or just maybe it's what I've said. They came from us. They're lying to us. So they're hybridizing life from Earth to deceive us into thinking that aliens are real. We are the ancients, if you will. Our solar system, our world is young. The universe is actually young. It's not billions of years old. It has an appearance of age, just like when God created Adam and Eve from the dust instantly. And they were fully formed. He created Eve from Adam's rib. He did her a little differently. But he created Adam fully formed. He created the animals fully formed, the birds fully formed, the sea life fully formed. And then able to reproduce naturally after that, without his intervention. Okay? But in the same way that we were fully formed initially and we didn't evolve, the universe was fully formed initially after the Big Bang explosion. That did happen. And that is biblical. And the universe expanded extremely rapidly, but God gave it an appearance of age almost instantly. Okay? And eventually it will wind down, and God will change it. Scripture says that too. Scripture actually talks about the universe being folded up like a cloak, like a garment that God wears almost. Like he's going to fold it up and change it one day, long time in the future. But in the meantime, he started on earth with us. And he wants us to expand one day out into the universe and populate it, but not as the fallen creatures we are that are already endangering life right here. He's going to fix all that. And Scripture addresses that. And I'm not going to get into all of that today. But it's all going to be fixed. And we will continue. And millions of years from now, human beings will look back on this time and they'll say, we were the ancients. Okay? And we will be the ancients in their eyes. And we'll still be alive if we serve God. We'll never die. Okay? We'll have bodies like these, but they'll be eternal. A lot better than transhumanism, by the way. We'll be able to reproduce, be able to feel, to experience. We won't be computerized. We'll have souls and spirits still, just like now. Something transhumanism could never accomplish with technology. Anything the devil offers us is always a pale counterfeit compared to what God can do and has offered to do for us if we will serve him. All right, so there are Christians who suggest many of the dinosaurs were hybrids. Covered that. Let's move on. So you've heard contrary narratives. You're getting the idea listening to me here today that this is very different, what I'm telling you. It's not what you've heard. It's not what you've believed. It's not what practically everybody out there in the UFOs enthusiast, aliens arena is saying. I'm the guy who comes in, puts the cog in the middle of that turning wheel, and shatters it. I'm giving you the truth. But I'm giving it to you, and you will soon see, with the kind of evidence none of those folks could produce. And it's because God sent me to do that. And I'm not smarter than anybody else. God has equipped me throughout my life by the events he's put in my life, the choices that he's led me to make, by his Spirit even before I knew him, to get me to the point where I could put this together and give it to you. But he led me to do it. And when I found the first living creatures on Mars, when I first saw them, I was... my jaw dropped. I didn't expect to see anything living in our solar system whatsoever. I did believe that the humanoid aliens were real, not as aliens per se, but I didn't expect to find life all over our solar system. Okay? God led me to that photo and many others, as you're going to see. And I'm giving you the ability to go find that stuff yourself after today. All right, so the Nephilim also took some humans as allies. I told you that the Nordics, which look just like us, are basically human. I haven't done a gene test on any of them, but I would bet that if we did, they'd be exactly like us, completely compatible with us. And in fact, before Noah's flood, human beings lived to be longer, like the Nephilim do, even now, still. Before the flood, we lived to be almost 1,000 years in age before we died. It wasn't until the degradation of our environment and certain plant life and things died out, went extinct, after the flood, that our lifespan reached this short, 100-plus years where we're at today. But you look in the chronology of the Old Testament, people lived hundreds of years, often to be almost 1,000 years in age. Noah and his sons and their wives and their families after the flood, they lived for hundreds of years. But you could see if you follow the biblical chronology that each generation it was a little less until it got to be the average where we're at now. Actually, it was less because people didn't have medicine, hundreds of years ago. It's been going back up a little bit. But it's nowhere near where it was before the flood. And after Christ returns, he's going to change the environment of the world from one that's so damaged from the things that are still coming, that life on earth would become extinct, including in the oceans, to one that is supernaturally healed and becomes like the Garden of Eden, and we're mortal human beings. In other words, those who aren't Christians, who aren't believers, who don't serve God, but who survive and become Christians after Christ returns, who are not resurrected at that time, but their resurrection is 1,000 years later. Those human beings who are still mortal, who now serve God, who didn't before Christ returns, their lifespans will be extended to be almost 1,000 years in age orderly, because God is going to heal the world, and he's going to make it like it was in the Garden of Eden before Noah's flood. He's going to restore what was lost with the flood. And that's going to happen before he makes a new earth, 1,000 years after that, almost. All right. So the Nephilim are still taking allies. The counterfeit aliens are taking allies, but it's not to benefit us, as I've shared. That's what the secret space programs, from their vantage point, are really all about. Now, I will tell you, there are people in the secret space programs who do not trust these creatures. From their perspective, it's, okay, let's get the technology. If they turn out to be evil, we'll be in a better place to deal with it, having the technology, than we would have been without it. Okay? So not everyone is in agreement. Not everyone trusts these creatures. There are all sorts of agendas out there, okay? But they're playing along to get the technology. They don't understand, however, that the end game is already structured. They don't have that evidence. I do. I give it in the series. So hopefully they'll get a hold of it and begin to realize that they've been in the devil's playground. All right, Noah's flood and fallen liars. So hybrids are literally throughout our solar system. There are people like John Lear, who's been talking about that for decades. You know, he says, it's all over the solar system. You know, to people who don't know that, he says, you're behind the curve. And of course, he says also that there's an atmosphere on the moon. That's not true. But he is right. There's an exosphere, hardly any gas, though, on the surface of the moon. But there is life all over the solar system, including on our moon. He's right about that. But he hasn't produced the evidence. Why? Okay, God didn't equip him to do that. God equipped me to do that. But there are people who know more than the average bird out there, if you will. John Lear is one of them. Okay? So these hybrids have been spread to the moon, to Mars. You know, I've got individual books on this, full of pictures in the Solar Apocalypse series. It's because there's so many of them. And they're so amazing to look at. And they're all different. There's as much variety of life on Mars, probably, as there is on Earth, even now, after the destruction that occurred on Mars. It's an incredible variety. And, you know, as you begin to find these creatures and look at them yourselves, you're going to say, wow. And it's always going to be a little different than the last thing that you found and saw. But it's clearly, you know, something you'll recognize as a creature. And I'm talking about, again, photos, images, much better than anything you've seen before what I'm going to show you in this presentation in a little while. All right. So there was judgment beyond Earth. I talked to you about a secret space program before the flood, right? There are legends, extra-biblical legends in lore about creatures, Nephilim, Anunnaki, who left the Earth, went out into our solar system in their own version of the Ark, but these were high-tech things, right? Spacecraft. Noah's Ark was a primitive boat, just like Scripture says. God didn't give us the technology. He didn't want us messing with that. He wanted us to acquire it on our own, over time, to let us grow like babies into children. You know, you learn to crawl, then walk, etc. But the fallen angels from the beginning, and the Nephilim from the beginning particularly, were giving us technology. Read about that, for example, in Enoch, right? They gave us metallurgy, all kinds of other things. We didn't discover all of that on our own as God had intended. We got accelerated from the start. Not everybody. But the Nephilim set about to hybridize life on Earth. And Noah and his sons were preaching for 120 years that God was going to wipe out all this violence that had occurred on Earth since the Nephilim got involved, you know, in spreading dinosaurs or whatever. And because we were fallen ourselves, right? And getting misled spiritually. For 120 years, Noah and his sons built the ark. They warned mankind. Destruction was coming. You want to live? You come aboard the ark with us. They were mocked. They weren't believed. And when the day came, God brought the creatures by his Spirit, spoke to them directly, to get aboard the ark. The ones that were not hybridized, that needed to survive to repopulate the desolated earth after the flood. But only 8 human beings survived, and we all come from them today. And this is perhaps another reason that we don't live as long. Less genetic diversity, perhaps, maybe, than existed before the flood in human beings. There could have been billions of humans, literally, before the flood, who died out. As many as there are today. It's possible. You know, when you talk about human beings who didn't live for, 70, 80 years, or say 30 to 50 years when they could reproduce. Instead, they lived for 800, 900 years and could reproduce before they died. Generation after generation, they could produce a lot more children on average. The world could have been very dense in population, but God wiped it all out. 8 human beings survived. But the Nephilim were warned. They knew God was going to do this. They knew Noah served God. What did they do? They've been busy producing hybrids. They spread out into our solar system. They decided, let's populate Mars. And they may have been doing this before Noah was preaching. I'm saying they were doing it by that time. Okay? They said, let's populate Mars. Let's populate whatever sat between Mars and Jupiter. You know, there's evidence of at least one planet. But there may have been multiple planets that were destroyed, blown up, literally, between Mars and Jupiter. And so we got the asteroids. We got comets beyond that in our solar system. Let me say to you, Well, I'll come back to this. I'm going to make a point about the asteroids in the comments. It'll make this gel for you a bit, okay? But then we got that massive scar on Mars. People like John Brandenburg say, well, there's a lot of radiation, you know, that we can detect in Mars soil and so forth. We think there was a nuclear apocalypse on Mars, that it was bombarded by nukes from space. Well, maybe. I don't think so. It's actually possible to get that kind of radiation from an asteroid passing in the right way across the sun. It can happen in other ways. But however it happened, there's evidence of destruction. Between Mars and Jupiter, there's evidence of destruction on Mars in this huge gouge in the surface of the planet. Okay? Mars wasn't blown up, but it did have a lot of water at one time on its surface. There's a lot of evidence for that. Okay? A massive ocean. Where did it go? You know, if the solar system were billions of years old, sure, maybe it would have evaporated into space. And that's if also NASA had been right about the supposedly thin atmosphere of Mars. That's a lie. Andrew Basiago has testified to that. So have others have been on Mars. And before we're done today, I'm going to prove to you that they've been on Mars. I'm going to give you the kind of proof nobody thought was possible. So, remarkable stuff. And I need you to tell me when we're half an hour before the end of our presentation. I need that half hour to show you the video with William Whitecrow. So,
we're kind of at 4:22, and if we want a few minutes to...
Well, I've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to rush through this unless you guys want to give me extra time. So, I will rush through it.
We want to make sure our next
Yep.
speaker has a shot.
All right, so anyway, God brought judgment. And I believe that what happened in our solar system occurred at the same time that Noah's flood happened here on Earth. And people talk about the Earth having been struck potentially by an asteroid or multiple asteroids. That could have happened at the same time that these other catastrophes in the solar system occurred. But anyway, I submit to you that Mars and perhaps these other planets were very dense with life, hybrid life. And when we look at what happened to the oceans and the water on these other planets, you know, Mars, etc., I submit it was blown into space full of creatures in it. If water came to Earth over billions of years and other bodies in our solar system over billions of years through bombardment, as has been claimed, then all you'd find in comets is just water and dust and rock and dirt and mud. Asteroids would just be the same thing with less water. Okay? You might, if you were lucky, find some microbes that floated off of somewhere like Earth after it was struck through space, survived, reached one of these bodies, and somehow took hold there. That's all you could ever find, right? What if that's not what's in them? What if you can show that's not what's in them? What if they're full of complex biology themselves? And you can prove that. Then every astrophysical cosmological model out there that exists among evolutionists goes out the window. Nothing works in their theories, period. You can't explain that. So I submit that our comets and so forth actually came from Mars oceans and from the oceans of these other planets, you know, that were blown up. I'm going to prove that, actually, in this series of books. All right. Nephilim had physical bodies like us. They originated from us. We talked about this. I'm going to jump on. I want you guys to see photos. So I showed a creature. I'm going to show it to you. I call it a loctoid. I call it a loctoid because it is a very intelligent-looking locust-like creature with an amphibian-like mouth on Mars, fully exposed. One of the rare instances that I have of a fully exposed creature. I say rare, but again, I have thousands of images. Really, I have tens of thousands. But to be conservative, I've got thousands of good ones. Okay? This is on Mars. What do you see? Is that a rock?
Looks like wood.
What is this blue stuff? Doesn't that look just like something you'd see on Earth? Petrified wood covered with lichen? That was taken by a rover. I'm going to show you the same photo with a rover in it in a moment. So, that's obviously petrified wood. You can see the fibers underneath the lichen, right? That's a NASA photo. Why hasn't the world seen that? That all alone is proof of complex biology on Mars, beyond microbes. Lichens are complex biology, let alone wood. Okay? That one photo blows it out of the water for the whole world and for every space program out there, secret or otherwise. Okay? That's nothing. All right? But like, and again, that's complex biology. I want you to see that because I want you to see what petrified wood on Mars looks like. This loctoid creature I'm going to show you, I've got a really funny story that goes with it, and it relates to this piece of wood. So we'll come back to that, okay? Same photo with a rover in it. Same piece of petrified wood. That, by itself, blows everything out of the water for the world. Spread it around, but again, that's nothing. Okay? Why isn't NASA shouting about that? But they did put out the photos. NASA's not all bad. But I will tell you all, the word NASA does actually mean liar in Hebrew. If you look it up, NASA, that's how it's pronounced, actually means liar. So they chose an interesting acronym for themselves. They go right along with the Nephilim, even though they're not the secret space program. All right. There are things out there that you just can't believe unless you see them. Even I can't believe them unless I see them. You know, in some science fiction, like Godzilla movies, or Cloverfield, you see these giant reptiles traipsing around, damaging buildings and so forth, right? Or Pacific Rim, where they depict them as coming from a kind of alien invasion, right? These little humanoid critters, other reptiles, sending these huge ones that they call kaiju or whatever. Those creatures are tiny compared to some that actually have existed, have lived. Okay? The face on Mars is a bit over a mile in each direction. I've got photos of heads of creatures on Mars that are better defined, much better defined, where you can see the jaws, the teeth, the eyes. In fact, most of the head fully preserved, that are miles in size, just the heads alone. Fossilized, dead. I've got a photo of scales that are unambiguously scales, the back of such a creature that's buried, all you can see is its back, that is tens of miles in length. Okay? That's on Mars. There are creatures that size elsewhere in our solar system, and I have photos of them. They're unambiguous. I mention all of this because the face on Mars is not the artificial construct that people have claimed. It's either a badly decayed mountain or it's actually a huge fossil. Okay? So we'll come back to that.
Tim, excuse me. If you want a half an hour for the, you've only got like a minute before a half.
Okay, let's look at photos.
You've only got until 5.
We should have started right here.
Okay. You guys want to see the photos, all right?
Yes.
So I'll jump through them.
Go.
And then we'll do the presentation and we'll do what we can on it. All right. Have you guys ever seen Tremors, the graboids?
Yeah.
Okay. This thing here is one on Mars. It's eating. Right there. It's exposed. That's its mouth. And that's what it's eating. Looks a bit like a rock, right? But it's not a rock. And I want to mention one thing that we didn't get to. Insects, amphibians, reptiles, they hibernate, right? They often hide themselves under the soil to protect themselves from the elements. All they expose is their heads, their eyes, their nose, their mouth. Okay, enough to survive, in other words. This is why we see so many things that are rocks on Mars that actually aren't rocks. They look like faces or heads because either they're fossils and badly decayed, flash fossilized, or they're actually alive. Sometimes you catch them with their eyes open, their mouths open, their teeth exposed, their tongues and mouths exposed in full color. Okay, I'm going to show you something. All right. So a lot I won't get to cover here. This is a flash fossilized fossil from Earth. It's a nodosaur. It's one of the few good examples from Earth that we have. Most fossils on Earth are just bones. You don't see anything more than a skeleton preserved, right? Often scattered. Once in a while, though, we find something like this. And this is one of the best examples. You can Google this, nodosaur, N-O-D-O-S-A-U-R. Find lots of photos of it. You can see the full structure of the exterior of the creature. Inside of that thing, Probably its organs are fossilized, its cells are fossilized. You can see the structure of all of that, okay? That is a rarity, an exception on Earth, okay? It's the exception, not the rule. On Mars, that is the rule, not the exception. In order to get a fossil like that, you need a lot of salts, perchlorates, in the chemistry of the soil. You need the right water combination and temperature, and you need microbes, the right bacteria. You get that combination of water, bacteria, and percolates, and that's the kind of fossil you end up with. And that only takes hours to days to accomplish for the bacteria. It doesn't take a long time to fossilize that. And so all the soft tissue is preserved in stone, basically. That's the rule on Mars. So that's why you see so many things that sort of look like heads, but they're decayed and you can't quite tell. But you'll notice when you look at rocks on Earth, they don't look like heads. When you look at a lot of these things on Mars, they do. And it's because you're actually looking at fossils, or in some cases, living creatures, that are only exposing enough of themselves above the soil, because they're buried in Mars' looser soil, less gravity, to hibernate or to protect themselves. And sometimes that's how they died. So they fossilized. But superior fossils on Mars, much better on average. Oh, sorry, going the wrong way. Here we go. Mistaking fossils for artificial structures. There are lots of things that have been called artificial structures on the moon that are not. They're actually huge fossils. But it's because people can't conceive of creatures of such a size that they've assumed that they're looking at artificial structures. They're obviously not rocks. They're obviously not something that is ordinary on the surface of the moon. But what they're really looking at is pieces of fossils, huge creatures, in most cases. Pareidolia versus paradenial. This is where we get into my interesting example of the fossil I showed you of the wood. Paradenial is a term I came up with. It means not seeing an object that's actually there. Okay? Paradenial is seeing something that isn't there, making it up in your own mind and saying, oh yeah, it looks like that. Okay? Paradenial is the opposite. It's obviously there, but your brain won't let you see it, or you just refuse. Willful blindness. Okay, this is my loctoid example. I'm going to show you the creature. There's a lady who's a well-known reporter, in this whole field. I showed her this creature, which you're about to see. I sent her a printout of it with a little copyright notice across it until the book is published. She said, that's not for me. That looks like a piece of driftwood. Of course, it didn't compute for her that if that were actually driftwood on Mars, it's also proof of complex biological life. Point made, even if it's driftwood, right? But she didn't get that part. It just was something she couldn't handle. You guys tell me if this looks like wood to you. This is going to be a good laugh forever. Well, we'll get to it. Okay, one question I want to toss out, think about this afterwards. Why do NASA's rovers all look like creatures? Is there a reason for that? If you want to know later, I'll tell you why, but they actually do if you look at all of them. Like a bug or
Camouflage.
some crawling thing, with the neck sticking up and the head. There's a reason they were designed that way. It's not all just practicality. Okay, quality of images. We get all kinds of things on Mars. You guys have seen that. Okay, images. This is my photobomber. This is a creature that moves. One of them. There are many. I'll show you this series of images afterwards for those who want to see it. This little creature here on the right is surrounded by other creatures. Those are the heads of other creatures all around it, including down here, over here. This thing, though, is moving among other things in the background through a series of photos and moving massively. Not small movements, in other words, massive movements. But there are other creatures around it that also move. This is its head right there. This thing, this dark thing around it here, is the shell. It's a creature that has a shell, kind of like a turtle. It's upright, basically, so you're seeing the inside of the shell. I want you to see the loctoid, though. I'll come to that. Okay, this is another one. So I'll just quickly tell you what these are. Take a look in the corner here. You see that?
Yeah.
It's a creature with ears, eyes, open mouth, right there in the corner. Okay? That creature is in the midst of a bunch of blue things that NASA would call rocks. They're not rocks. They're more like eggs. And there are little turtle-like creatures eating some of them around this thing, I wanted to show you this one, because that's really obvious. Okay? That one photo would blow it out of the world, or excuse me, blow it out of the water for Mars and the rest of the world. Complex biological life on Mars. Find one rock anywhere on Earth that looks anything like that. No skeptic could. That photo could have been taken on Earth, but that creature doesn't live on Earth. It looks more like a dragon's head, doesn't it? That's actually a little dinosaur. This is part of its body right here. It's not a snake. All right, you guys may have seen this photo before. It's a fairly famous one. People claim that this is an ape or something like that on Mars. You ever heard of the phrase not seeing the forest for the trees? Right? Let's look a little more closely at what this really is. Do you see this thing right here? Notice the shiny black and white? That's the head of a creature right behind this. This may be part of its body, or it may be a separate creature sitting off over here. Okay? But notice this right here. That's a dinosaur. See the horn? That's very similar to one on Earth. There's its leg. It's obscured by this. That is a dinosaur. That's on Mars. Walking the surface alive. This is another creature right here. There's its head. There's its eyes, just seeing its head exposed. So you're seeing this one's head, that one's head. You're seeing the body of this and its head. You're seeing that thing, whatever it is, ape or not. That's on Mars. Okay? Lots of people have seen this photo. Nobody has ever pointed these things out. Okay? The brains didn't let them. I love this one. You've heard of Andy and William Wycrow encountering pterodactyls on Mars, right? Okay? That's not a pterodactyl. Pterodactyls have this bony thing that stick out the back. But there was this thing called a pterosaur on Earth, much larger than a pterodactyl. And it also flew and had claws. It just had a different head and it was bigger. This is the beak of a dead pterosaur on Mars. Just seeing the head, there is its claws. One pair of claws. That's what that is. I looked at this photo for years. And I thought, well, it sort of looks like an object, but I can't figure out what it is. There are a few photos of it that were taken, some darker. You know, it's just a little harder to see, for example, underneath the beak. But what you're seeing here is the coloration like you'd see on a reptile, on its skin, across the beak, the striations of the colors. And then the underside of the beak, part of the wing, the claws, and the rest of the head. Buried in the soil. They're coming out, popping out of the side of the hill. Okay? There are a series of photos, including with the rover in the background, showing this. That head is bigger than the rover. Okay? What you're seeing right there. That's what that image really is. Lots of people have seen this photo. They just didn't know what they were looking at. And right here, by the way, you can see the teeth. Some of the teeth on this side. All right, there's my loctoid. We talked about HDR software. This is how it appears without any adjustment whatsoever to the photo. All I've done is crop it and enlarge it, nothing more. No color adjustments, nothing. Okay? This is done with a Loxos enlarger. This creature right here, amphibious-like mouth, intelligent-looking forehead, eyes, there's its rectangular ear. I believe these are folded wings across it. And right here, you'll see a very patterned shoulder like an insect would have, and a leg that comes back that's folded under the creature right here. Okay? And in its mouth, it's actually eating something. You can't see that so well. I'm going to show you an enlargement of this. And I believe these are folded wings right here. All around this thing are other creatures, everywhere you look. These things are creatures. This is a creature. All behind it. This is an artificial structure. A box of some sort behind it. In the background, okay? This creature, the photo was taken from quite a distance. That is much larger than you and I. Okay? Let me show you how it appears when it's been put through HDR software and enlarged. Okay, so I've got a copyright on that, but you can see more detail. You see how things that were hidden in the shadows are a little more visible now? Notice the shoulder, the folded leg, the eyes, the mouth, and intelligent appearance. Okay? That's a creature that's basically fully exposed on Mars. Another example, put through a different HDR filter, but again, one of these packages I told you about. Same creature, so up, excuse me. We go up here, up, down. You see it? Okay, that's what was called a piece of driftwood. Does that look anything like the piece of wood with the lichen on it that you saw? No, it's an obvious creature with a great symmetry, rectangular ear, eye, nose, forehead that's quite artistic, mouth that's kind of amphibious, and here it's eating something. Okay? Another creature, I presume. You know, with the folded leg, right here. Okay? Again, one photo that blows everything out of the water. But it gets better. All right, here's another one. Different creatures. Again, here only the heads are exposed. Notice the mandibles off this one. That's a nose. This is an ant-like head, but it's not an ant. It's not an insect. Okay? Notice the pattern here around the base of the skull. These are also creatures. This is a creature. All you're seeing is the heads poking out from the side of a hill, basically. And again, all around them, more creatures. These are just the ones I'm showing you. That, I thought, might be like the insect, the ant-like thing that Tony Rodriguez, encountered on the moon that he reports encountering. It's not, but it does have something that sort of resembles mandibles, like some insects, off of its nose. This, by the way, is another very interesting creature. You're just, again, seeing the portion of the head exposed. These creatures, because Mars is colder, and most of them are hybrids of amphibians, reptiles, insects. Some sea creatures also, but they hibernate. Mostly you only see their heads. Once in a while, like that loctoid that I showed you, you see the whole creature. All right. Oh, by the way, that's a blow-up. You can see an enlargement of it, a little bit bigger here. Okay? Again, obvious creatures. Any biologist would look at this, and there would be no question in their minds of what they're seeing. They wouldn't believe their eyes, but they'd know it's not a rock. Okay, these are a couple creatures. One's eating the other on Mars. Again, no adjustment to this. I blew it up. I didn't sharpen it, didn't do anything. This one is chomping down on that one. They eat each other. They also eat lichens and algae and so forth. Those are primary food sources for reptiles and insects, by the way, on Earth often. And Mars has a lot of those, lichens and algae. I love this one. This is one I showed William Whitecrow because of this thing over here in Andy. And they talked about their pterodactyls. That's not a pterodactyl, but it is a bird-like creature. And these are its wings. It's upright. It's got a long snout. The eyes exposed. It's looking across the valley here at a dinosaur that's just peering out from the rock. That's its eye. Look at the detail on that. Many of these creatures are camouflaged. Just like reptiles, certain insects, amphibians like octopi on Earth, many of these creatures on Mars have active camouflage. They're hybrids and they have that built into their genes. This thing is camouflaged to look kind of like the rock, but it's a dinosaur, and the eye gives it away, and so do some other things. I'll show you this put through an automatic color adjustment filter, nothing done manually. Same image. You can see again, still red. Brings it out a little more detail. Okay? There it is again. This is a different photo in the series from NASA, but the same things are in it. There's the creature. There's this thing over there. But notice this up here, fossils. And I'll show you a better image of that. Same thing again. Any paleontologist would look at that right there, and obviously they know they're looking at a fossil. There'd be zero question in their mind of that. Complex biological fossil. Fossil is actually this thing. But then there's this little dino right over here. Not a fossil. That's on Mars. It would happily have one of us for lunch. I said on Coast to Coast that there were creatures on Mars, photos, where it's like looking at a dog in your backyard. There's one, fully exposed on the surface, scurrying about. The head, the legs, the body, not sharply in focus, but clearly not a rock. There's a creature popping its head out looking at it. Maybe it's thinking about having a meal, I don't know. I love this one. That's a humanoid creature of sorts, just because it kind of looks humanoid. Scurrying about kind of like a turtle, but there's its face and its head. Again, taken from quite a distance, not perfectly focused, but in color, and you know that's not a rock. Very rough skin, probably reptilian, with, again, an intelligent-looking face. So again, you can see the eyes, the nose, the mouth area, the body. All right. The evidence that Andy and William Whitecrow were on Mars. I interviewed each of them for several hours without telling them anything about what I had, what I was working on, what I'd been doing for years. Nothing, except that I was an author, okay? And actually, I've interviewed most of the people who claim they've been on Mars for hours each. I asked them a bunch of questions. In many cases, questions nobody else has ever asked them. And I cherry-picked their answers based on the things that I possessed, including, what kind of creatures did you see? Describe them for me, okay? Everyone's heard of Andrew Basiago's plesiosaur, right? He described it as a creature with a horse-like head, a serpent-like neck, and a tortoise-like body. And he's shown photos of what he says is his plesiosaur on Mars. Those photos, to me, and to a lot of people, would be pretty ambiguous. It's not that they aren't what he says they are. They're just not easily recognized. I have a very unambiguous photo of that. And when I first heard Andrew Basiago speaking, that's a few years ago, on the radio, like 3 years ago, he was talking about the jump room program, you know, having been to Mars, back and forth. I thought he was nuts. I really did. And then he talked about there being dinosaurs on Mars, and my ears perked up, and I thought, okay. But then again, there are people like George Adamski who said that they'd been taken in UFOs, flying saucers, to other planets, and they'd seen dinosaurs there, and they photographed them and brought back Polaroids and showed those Polaroids to the world. And I've seen those, and I thought, well, you know, those are easily faked. Those are easily faked. There's no trail of evidence. You can't prove really where it came from. Not necessarily convincing at all. But then Andy said, and there's this thing I call a plesiosaur, right? He described the creature. And I thought, wow, that's exactly how I would have described it. A horse-like head, a serpent-like neck, and a tortoise-like body. And when I showed this thing to Andy, in an interview like the one I've got for William Whitecrow that I hope I'll get to show you, I said to him, when I first saw this on Mars, I thought, okay, the Martians are Satanists because they're making snake-like heads in their statues. It looked like a carved statue to me. So I thought it was. But it's, again, very detailed, unambiguous, like, for example, this creature that I showed you that I call a loctoid or these others. Completely exposed on the surface of Mars. Very good picture. But then I realized, no, it's a fossil. That one is. It's a flash fossilized fossil where the whole appearance of the creature is preserved in stone. It wasn't a carving. All right, another creature that Andy described for me is his dump truck-sized locust. No one in the world has seen this except for my son and me. He said it's a creature that's very fast, it's carnivorous, and that if you ran into it, it would eat you. You shouldn't try to run from it. You had no hope. Okay? He described it as being big like a dump truck. This thing here, you can see it's got 3 sets of legs on each side. 1, 2, 3. And he said this thing had a head like a mantid, not like a locust on Earth, in other words. Right? Notice the shape of the head. Just like a mantid. But notice this thing right here. Between its legs, its front legs, and below its head, that is a humanoid skull. It might even be a human skull. Probably something it had for a meal. Either a humanoid or a person. A man or a woman. That's a skull. These are whatever version of wings it's got. It doesn't fly, obviously. This thing might be a flash fossilized fossil, or it might be alive. I don't know. But it's definitely a creature, and it's not a pile of rocks. You can't find a pile of rocks on Earth with a set of obvious legs, wings that go out like that, a head like this, or something like that in front of it, that someone like Andy has described as existing. Okay? That's evidence that Andy was on Mars. The existence of that creature. Andy doesn't know about this photo. He still hasn't seen it. I was going to show it to him for the first time today. He's never seen it.
We're done.
NASA took